well cut. You've got a beard, but it's again very well cut beard, very neat beard.
A real banker.
Yeah, you've got glasses, so you're looking smart. You're looking the part.
But from where I'm sitting, under the table, there's jeans.
Where are you sitting? Looking under the table.
Where jeans are. So appearances can be deceptive.
I do apologise to my co-host. He's always doing that.
Sorry, I'm back in my chair now.
Yeah, it's so right, wearing jeans though. With
It's part of the strategy.
What's your footwear, Carlos?
It's interesting because since I realized that I have to have this life, that sometimes the appearance is important, but you have to keep your honesty in terms of what you are.
And your personality.
Yes, and I try to wear and I try to get dressed the way that they could express this reality that is my life. And sometimes you think that you have to be just one thing. But no, of course not. We are a multiplicity that's all in a big movement. So, and I'm trying to express with my clothes, that's reality.
Of who you are. So there's a combination there, I think, saying of who you are and that honesty. And you are the head of the Bank of Brazil, so clearly it's okay to wear your jeans.
No, yes, because I'm the boss of the so,
that's the key. You can wear what you like when you're the boss. Fantastic. We're going to find out more about your career and about the book, The Rise of a New Order. But just to come back on the tattoos here. So we were talking about tattoos and the good ones, the bad ones. And Jeff in Jumeirah is saying tattoos, owning a big dog, driving a big Jeep when you never ever go into the desert. So it doesn't take an amateur psychologist to work that one out. Thank you, Jeff in Jumeirah. And also analysis of the tribes, the tribal. So, you know, tattoos being tribal. So most tribes want the simplicity and that the tribe represents and not the ferocity that it implies. So looking sharp, looking different is what this person's really looking at when they go for their tattoo. You have tattoos, Carlos.
I have a lot of them.
See, I can't see the tattoos, but...
Yes,
and neither can I.
Cover. It's part of the strategy.
It's a good strategy, is it?
When I started work for Banco do Brazil, I was 15 years old, and I had a tattoo already. And that time people trying to advise me, oh, you're going to have a problem because of your tattoo. So when I went to the interview, I covered the tattoo, because I was convinced that it could be considered a bad thing for a banker to have a tattoo. But it's all time, no?
What was the tattoo of, can I ask?
Yes, I have 5 tattoos, and the 2 that I like most is the big dragon that I have in my left arm, and the tribal as well that I have in my right arm.
But I mean, it's very interesting, and it's what we've been talking about today, that, you know, a man of your stature, a man of obviously your qualifications and where you've got to in life, you head up the Bank of Brazil here in Dubai, and you still feel that, you know, you have all that intellect and experience and everything, you still have to cover your tattoos for an interview.
No, yes, the question is, I was 15 years old. Now I realize that for banks, what is the important thing is the bottom line.
We're talking money here, Carlos.
That's fine.
Have you got dollars tattooed anywhere?
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you have tattoos, if you wear glass, if you're bald or no. The bottom line is the important thing for bankers.
So going back then to when you were 15 years of age there in Brazil, and what was it that made you want to have this tattoo, the first tattoo?
Yeah, it was a small dragon, the son of the big one that I had now. And I remember when my father looked at my arm, he tries to avoid to look at, because that time for old people have a tattoo to has a tattoo was something that is considered not a good thing in Brazil. But things change in different place and in different moment. That time in Brazil was considered not a good thing. Have a son with a tattoo in his arms. But things change a lot since that time.
And obviously when you're 15 years old, you make very different decisions to you would in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. And the thing about tattoos is that once you have them, you're branded for life with that. Now, you made the decision for the first one at 15. Do you have any regrets?
No, because the technology improved a lot. So you can cover, change, and I suppose in the future you can change your arms as well. So I was convinced that the decision is nothing is forever. Okay. If you consider that everything's changed all the time. So And it's a very interesting thing to think about.
What age were you, if I can ask, the last tattoo that you had?
The last one is the cover-up, and this small dragon that I have in the left hand because I grown up and the tattoo became small, so I have to adapt to my new reality in terms of my body. It was 3 years ago, and I'm going to Brazil for my holidays, and I intend to cover up the other one that I have on my back because it's ugly, very ugly.
So it's more about, that's a vanity thing, it's not about impressions that you're giving to other people.
No, the tattoos for me represent cycles. So each tattoos has linked a story. So I can stay here telling different stories for each tattoo that I have in my body. Each one represents a cycle of my life or some important thing, some important time that I was living that time.
And clearly the dragon is an important symbol to you. So what does that mean, the dragon, to you?
I don't know. I suppose that I didn't know that I was coming to Dubai, to the Asia part of the world, the Orient. So, but that means a very good visit card to do, because since I arrived, people are crazy for this tattoo, and lived and everywhere. People, oh man, this is very nice, very impressive. So I suppose that time I was sensitive to realize that in the next 2 years could be something that could help me in my job here as well.
Fantastic. Well, let's go back then and start off with you there in Brazil as a young boy. Now, did you intend, was it your ambition to work in finance, to become a banker?
No, that time was a very tough time in Brazil, and to get a job in Brazil was the most important thing. When I decided to start to work for Banco do Brasil as an office boy, because I had a job. That was the real motto at that time. I was finished my college, my high school, and entering the college. And I had the idea to have a medicine degree at that time, and I had to give up and start studying business, but only because I had a job that was part of the financial world, the business world. I had no idea what was be a banker at that time. I didn't have any ambition to get a career or things like that, so on and so forth. It's only for a job. Remember that was 80s in Brazil, and it was very tough time. So, and could say that when I started to work for Banco do Brasil, I didn't have any idea about my life, in fact, what my life became some years after.
Yeah, we're going to find out more about your life and those years, and also about your family and that life growing up in Brazil and becoming a financier, working in the banking field and being here in Dubai just over a year and being the head of the Bank of Brazil. And this book is already published in Portuguese, The Rise of a New Order. And this book reflects on the recent financial crisis and reveals the reorientation of the global world and the emergence of a new order, according to Carlos. So really looking forward to finding out more from you. If you've got any questions for Carlos, then do text in on 4001.
Hey, only on Dubai Eye 103.8.
The UAE, but also an author and a philosopher. And we were asking you if people have surprised you. Who are they? And Nancy texted in earlier saying a former work colleague, an Emirati lady, Dana, went on to become the first Emirati lady to hit the Antarctica. Very, very proud of her. That's from Nancy. Thank you so much. Yes, the people you're at school with, at university with, or that you've worked with along the way, those people that have gone on to surprise you for whatever reason, let us know on 4001. Now, Carlos, you have this book, The Rise of a New Order. It's already published in Portuguese, and it's being launched here in the Emirates this coming Wednesday. So tell me how the book came about.
In 2007, I was in Brazil preparing a presentation to the board of the bank. And I was involved in some hostile war for some bids for acquisition facilities that was very common at that time. It was a time of a huge liquidity, global liquidity. And Banco do Brasil, that is the biggest Latin American bank at that time, was supporting lots and lots of corporate clients in that acquisition. And we were involved with, that time, the biggest acquisition for a Brazilian company, that is Vale, a big iron ore producer, the biggest iron ore producer, and the second biggest iron ore mining company. And in 2007, the end of 2007, this crisis was knocking on the door. but it's not there yet. But studying some subjects and comparing some numbers, especially about the financial assets, I realized that something was wrong. Because the assets, the financial assets, was 3.5 times more than all of the GDP that was being generated globally, worldwide. And in 2008, this company, Vale, entered in another offer. The first one was $18 billion. And we were in all of the facilities, and the takeout of the facilities, that is the debt that is used, long-term debt that is used to pay the previous one that is a bridge loan. And the second offer that Vale was involved wasn't $18 billion, was $70 billion. The numbers, the figure that time was amazing. It's more, billions was something like your daily and regular, like you go home with some billions in your pocket. And the number was completely strange for me that time. But alhamdulillah that the offers not happened, because if it was, I was very not so relaxed the way that I used to be after
so you saw,
failed.
yes,
because
there was warning.
In 2008, the crisis came after the Lehman Brothers bankruptcy.
So that the warning signs were there for you. Your alarm bells were ringing for you.
Yeah. And since that time, I was involved with this subject because I'm a banker, a real banker, and my Banco do Brasil is present in 23 countries. So, and I had covered the Europe and the States as well. But when I arrived in Dubai 1 year ago, and I have launched my first book. My first book was launched last year before it came. Is about the change in this concept of modernity because of the speed that was impressed in the flow of the contents. And capital is a flow as well. So I have been thinking a lot about it. But after the debt crisis in Europe, I realized that it was time to tell a bit more about the panel, the last 6 centuries of history.
So the book, and indeed the books, are really about reflection of what happened in that time in financial history and ways that we can maybe protect ourselves or do it differently in the future. Is that the general sort of message of the books?
The idea is to give a panorama about the 6 centuries of history that was responsible to consolidate a model that was based in an era where the economic system was the capitalism, the political system is the democracy, and the point that was the point of consolidation of this era was the Industrial Revolution. So in the 18th century. So, and I point that this model, the Occidental model that was spread globally, that is the model that is just one dimension today, because after the Cold War, at the end of the Cold War, you don't have a different system, you don't, only one. And this model was consolidated in the 18th century. The idea is to give the people the comprehension about facts and to bring the facts connected and try to explain how the system arrived in this stage, or this phase that I used to call the financiarization of the capital, or the global capital.
And as a philosopher, as well as an author, do you see these models and these patterns repeating themselves in the future, or is it very important that we change?
This model will never be repeated.
Well, I was going to say, that's a really good question, Richard, but I'm also interested, therefore, in, if we look at the past first, and tying in with what you're saying, though, has this ever happened before in any form globally in history?
Yes, in the 20s, 29, and 30s, you have a big and huge crisis that is called a Big Depression. It was the first global crisis that the world entered together. Because until the beginning of the 20th centuries, we didn't have this idea of a global world because of the technology. We couldn't move around. At the end of the 19th century, when England was the first country that could to become a leader of a movement of the first globalization. You could say that the first globalization was at the end of the late of the 19th century, 1879, after the Napoleon War, in a big period of peace that the world was living. And from that time, the world see different type of class. There was a guy, there was an author called Schumpeter, and Schumpeter create a theory, and Alan Greenspan loved Schumpeter. They create a theory that the capitalism works in cycles and in crisis after crisis, and it creates a theory that is creative destruction. I disagree totally that we need to have crisis, but I believe that the crisis is an inflection point that push ahead a different world, because we don't have the same word each second. The word that going to exist after I finish to say this word, it will be different always.
Well, it's very interesting stuff. And
now, joining us in the studio, as we have started off talking about appearances and people that surprise you, we're talking to Carlos Machado, who's the head of the Bank of Brazil in the UAE. But he's a philosopher and also an author, and he's written his book that's being launched here on Wednesday evening, The Rise of a New Order. And this book, and it's his second book, reflects on the recent financial crisis globally and reveals the reorientation of the global world and the emergence of a new order. So we're finding out from Carlos what that new order is in his mind, and really understanding how you came to this point, I think, Carlos. So starting off there in Brazil, you just had to get a job because that's what you did. You needed to have a job to earn money, and you had no idea that you were going to work in finance. But you did do a degree in philosophy. So how, as a young boy there, getting to that point of going to university, tell us about that part of your life.
Yes, when I started work for Brazil, I went to the university to study economy. But I gave up and decided that the philosophy was the really important thing for my life. I realized that the capability to think about not only things that are on the surface, but deeper, and to see in a different dimension, that time was important for me. But I had a job already, so I had to deal with how to be a banker and a thinker. So
and what does it take then? What's the difference? What does it take to be a banker? What's the personality type? What do you need to be good at?
No difference. But that time was a very huge difference, because I didn't see any relation between my daily base life. Every day I have to go to the bank. Every day I have to talk about things that was completely apparently disconnected with things that I used to hear in the university, and I used to read and write. But I was very young that time. After the 30s, I realized that there is no difference between things. In fact, the philosophy is in the base of all of the modern culture as well. After the 60s, when people came back to the Greeks, the philosophers assumed definitely the base of the science. And the society that was built at that time was based in Aristotle and Plato and Hume and different types of philosophers. And I realized that the only thing that philosophy could give me is the capability to understand better the bank activities and the bank business.
But would many bankers be doing a second degree or a degree in philosophy? Would you go? I mean, I think you could do business and philosophy for sure. I can see the connection. But I wonder at that time, what did your colleagues, your peers think of you studying philosophy?
No, that time I thought and quit, because I'd like to have a life in academy and as a teacher and as a writer. But I had a job and I had a life, and I need to make money. That was the most important thing. And it would take me too much time to start a different career, because when I went to the philosophy university to get my degree, I was 23 years old already. So, and I had a kid, I have a daughter that depends on me that time. So I suppose that is the most important motive, because I didn't quit that time. I had to go on, and I went.
And that for so many people, when we talk on the show about career change or, you know, following your dream or being happy, you know, people have responsibilities and you can't just pack up one job and go and start something completely different if you've got somebody relying on you and you've got to support yourself. So it's not always an easy thing. So you've clearly found a way through finance to, you know, have the job that you enjoyed doing and that you were good at doing, but also to follow your sort of spiritual journey or fulfill yourself as well.
Yes, and the most important thing for me was discipline. Not order, because order is different than discipline. My world never had an order, never. But I had to use the discipline to have my daily tasks as a professional of the financial market.
And with that discipline and the responsibility with working in the financial market, I suppose you morally clashed with yourself, you know, on a daily basis when you're thinking of the compassion of philosophy and everything else. Then you have to make these very harsh decisions. Did that affect the way you approached your job?
Totally, because I'm much more confident that it's not so difficult to decide things. You have only to think, and I make a joke usually, that to be a banker, you only need 2 neurons. Unfortunately, someone has just one. So you have to have 2 to receive the information, think, and decide. If you have more than 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, you have a success in your career. But the discipline is because I used to wake up every day 4. Because I have a double journey as an evil twin that I became. I have to do everything that I need. I have to read, I have to write, I have to think, and I have to make money for Banco do Brasil, because Banco do Brasil is responsible to support me the last 28 years in my life. It's everything that I have.
And your writing career, you know, how does this fit in with your banking career? Because obviously you have a very hard-working day job. When you get home in the evening, surely you just want to relax, or is the writing the relaxation?
So you've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning.
Or do you put time aside? I mean, do you take a block period out from the finance world to sit down and write these books?
Yes, one thing that I realized that I have just one life. I don't have a life as a philosopher, or a life as a banker, or a life as a father, or a life as a son. I'm just one. And in this one that I am, I have to deal with everything. So everything that I used to do in my life, I do as the man that I am. The guy that I am, that part of it is a multiplicity that I'm father, I'm son, I'm writer, I'm banker, I'm philosopher, and I am nothing as well at the end of the day.
But this again is coming back to the word discipline that you talked about, and obviously you make sure you schedule and find time for each different sort of coloured area of your life.
Well, what's I think what I'm hearing here is that you have been true to yourself and who you are, the essence of you, that your identity. And I think where many of us can go wrong is that we feel that we're not being true to ourselves, but we're trapped or we're stuck or we have to follow that way. So you found that way. If it means getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to have a longer day to allow for everything that you need to do to be you, know, and be satisfied. So with the bank and then starting off there, office boy, you get your degree, you're working your way up. How was it an easy process to work your way up to the head of the Bank of Brazil, or did you find along the way there was resistance?
I used to say that I started working for Banco do Brasil twice. First when I was 15 years old, and after when 28 years old, when I decided to have a career in Banco do Brasil. And I worked for different areas in the bank, a retail area, and the middle market area as well. And at the end of the day, I became responsible for the corporate area that support big clients, real big clients, not but big clients. When I say big, it's a big, huge balance sheet, and billions and billions of dollars involved. And I used to be a cashier as well. And when I used to be a cashier, money for me is only a piece of paper. And when I became responsible for the corporate, money was bit and bytes only, because you didn't see the money. You can transfer money in a second transaction, and the word stock and so. But one thing I learned is the responsibility with the money that is not yours. Since I started working there, and Banco do Brasil is a public bank. This is very important as well. It's not a private bank. So I used to say that I manage the money of the Brazilian population. At the end of the day, is my money as well as a citizen. So the responsibility of Banco do Brasil, since they were set up 200 years ago, more than 200 years ago, Banco do Brasil is a bank that was set up when Dom João VI, the king of Portugal, went running away from Napoleon, went to Brazil, and they set up a bank. That's the bank that I work for. So, and it's easier when you see that the money is not yours. So because of that, we didn't, we wasn't affected, for example, by the speculative scheme that was the core of the financial system. I used to say that banks in Latin America, banks in Asia, banks here, is very similar. Today, I know most of the main banks here and the executives for those banks as well. And as Banco do Brasil, the banks here is in a very good way. The balance sheet is very healthy, and they have a responsibility that is support the long-term projects of developing the country. That's why the banks exist. Banks should support the development of a country, not take all of the advantage and at the end of the day, put some countries in some difficulties. Look at
it's long-term growth rather than quick fix.
Yeah. So what about your colleagues at the bank? What do they think about you being an author as well?
So now, at the beginning, it's a bit strange. They suppose that I was crazy. And I am, in fact. I am. I used to say that I'm crazy but not dumb. I'm crazy but not dumb. And they realize it. So, and the bottom line, if everything that had to be done was done, and at the end of the day, I was responsible to generate revenue for the bank that I was working for, that is the most important. And they learned it. And my career was based on the capability that I had to deliver things. And I used to say to my managers and some people that used to work with me, man, it doesn't matter the way that you're going to do, but you have to. So at the end of the day, if you're going to wear your jeans, if you have tattoos, or if, I don't care. It doesn't matter. So, but you have to deliver things that we are responsible for. We are mandated to deliver things from the Brazilian government. That is the idea that I put on me to keep on track.
Carlos, you can stay with us a little while longer. A few more questions we want to ask you, and lovely text messages coming in. One here from Armando saying, hello, I'm from Guinea, I live and work in Dubai, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Carlos and tell him that I'm listening to him. So there you go. And if you've got any questions for Carlos, then do text in on 4001.
Dubai Today with Suzanne Radford.
So the book is The Rise of a New Order, written by Carlos Machado. And Carlos, tell me, who's been the biggest influence on you? I mean, you've had an amazing life, and just listening to the stories from you. So along the way, who has had the most influence?
I have, in fact, lots and lots of influence in terms of my thought and my concept, the concepts that I developed during this time. But if I have to mention someone else, is a French guy called Gilles Deleuze. That is a French philosopher that influenced that generation. And Michel Foucault used to say that the century, the 20th century, will be the Deleuze century. And Gilles Deleuze really influenced me, and still influenced me on my concepts, or the concepts that I'm trying to develop as a philosopher. But there are many of influence. This is a process. It's a long-term process. You start thinking and you never stop.
And as a philosopher and as a banker, we're living in turbulent times. You know, Greece is in trouble, parts of Europe are in big trouble, America is in trouble. You know, with your expertise and your philosophy, what does the future hold? I mean, where do we stand? Do you see it bright?
I suppose that the new order is more than a forecast. This rise of a new order is a cry of hope. A different type of cooperation, a global cooperation. And you used to call this cooperation South-South. Why? Cooperation among countries that was excluded from this process. I've been in Tunisia, in Tunis, in a Brazilian government mission, trying to help the Tunisian people with the expertise of Brazilian institutions in terms of a green revolution that happened in Brazil in the 70s, because Brazil now is the biggest food producer globally. And there is an author that I like a lot, that's Jim O'Neill. Jim O'Neill from Goldman Sachs. Jim O'Neill was responsible to create the acronym on BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And Jim O'Neill in their research, they realized, the guys from Goldman Sachs realized that the center of the gravity, the the capital flow center of the gravity was changing. If you look at the countries like China, Brazil, Russia, and India, what's happened there? They're growing. Not the last 10 years. The forecast that the Goldman Sachs team did 10 years ago now is being confirmed. And Jim O'Neill wrote a new book last year that is called The Growth Map. And Jim O'Neill doesn't agree that we could call countries like Brazil, China, India as emerging countries, because they compare if they are emerging, so the Europe countries are submergent. So, and they prefer to refer to these countries like a growth country. So, if I have to point a hope, is that Jim O'Neill created another acronym, that is the N11. The next 11 countries that will be part of the club, and these countries are Mexico, Iran, Malaysia. So if you see, it's the rest of the world that was coadjuvant in this process. Now they are becoming main character, and the trade flow, the commercial flow, and the financial flow among these countries. If you go analyze, 50% of all the exports came from the emerging market, and until the end of 2012, some analysts is saying that 50% of all of the imports will become from this country as well. So I suppose that the solution is growth.
Growth, yes. The Rise of a New Order by Carlos Machado. And, you know, we started off talking about how you were a surprising character, a surprising person, Carlos, and that you got your first tattoo when you were a young boy and your father didn't approve. I'm sure your father's very proud of you now, but surprised as well, I think. Your father, what did he think of you as you grew up?
Wherever he is now, because he passed 4 years ago, he is present. You asked me about the influence that I had, no? And I only said about the guys in terms of philosophy. But my father is part of me. They are living on me, through me.
And you also have a daughter. And you told us off air that she has now had a tattoo also. And what was your honest reaction to your precious, unblemished daughter having this graffiti art put on her body?
I love it. I love it. When she sent me a photo, the only thing, because she's very small, very short, and the tattoo is huge. I asked her, are you convinced that it fits you? Because it's so big. But I love it.
She's going to grow into it.
I love it.
She's going to grow into her tattoo. Carlos, it's been a pleasure meeting you and talking with you this morning. And if people want to get hold of the book, it's being launched on Wednesday. It's already out there in Portuguese. You can buy this online, and then in the English version from Wednesday will be online also. There's a website here, www.livtariaculture.com.br, and that's LIVTARIA culture.com.br. We wish you all the very best.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thanks to you, Richard Manson.
My pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And yeah, you're going to have a whole new makeover done now, a new appearance.
I shall be tattooed, definitely. I think I'm going to go for the six-pack tattoo, and I shall show it off on air next Monday.
Excellent. Great for radio. Thanks so much for all your text messages this morning as well. Do stay with us here on Dubai 103.8. Up next is Siobhan Layden with The Edge. Have a great day. I'll be back with you tomorrow from 10 a.m.
Dubai.